£10 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
A dark Wednesday morning. Suddenly, everything goes pitch black. You're driving blind. What evil lurks in the gloom? What hides in the shadows around that corner, beyond that bend? Will you ever feel safe again? Course you will. Come to Halfords. We fit new headlight bulbs on the spot from just £8. And we're open late 7 days a week. See halfords.com for opening hours. Here in Chiswick. Ready for longer nights? Ready for anything. Halfords. For life's journeys.
Bulbs sold separately. Selected vehicles only. In most stores. Opening times vary.
Stock markets here in Europe are opening up for the trading session. It is a busy old day on the corporate reporting front, so lots of individual earnings reactions, but fairly complex in the sense that we've also got the Fed on today, so huge risk event for markets as they waited up for a potential rate cut and any changes to the pathway for future rate cuts. So all eyes on what will play out in the United States today, not to mention investors also digesting a new election date later on this year before Christmas here in the UK and the latest developments around Brexit. So a number of big risk events to watch out for. The stock Strip 600 guiding lower from the outset, down just over 0.1%, adding to slim losses that we saw on the boards yesterday. Let's just delve into some of these sectors and see how the earnings are impacting those sectors as it plays out on the boards. First up today, technology right at the bottom. Don't forget Apple comes out later on today, and we saw some caution around that stock and the sector on Wall Street in session. We're trading off about 0.6%. Some of those big supplier stocks in the basket. Also cautious on trade. Investors still waiting out for some details around a phase one agreement. Industrials towards the bottom of the boards. You saw a lightening up of some of those big Chinese names, the bats on Wall Street yesterday too, around trade-related baskets. Retail stocks trade low, about 0.33% south, next to the bottom of that chart. Household goods, media, construction, all in the weaker category this morning, and chemicals in the mix too. The rest of these stocks that we're looking at for you, banks, very important basket today. Standard Chartered, we're going through the numbers of that company. Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank, very heavy reporting day for the stocks, and on balance we are flat. Deutsche Bank at the bottom though, Standard Chartered at the top. Very mixed reactions to those numbers. Utilities, telcos trading higher. Oil and gas also firm at Total right at the top on earnings reaction, trading up by 1.1%. And autos, a very significant basket today too, with the likes of Volkswagen reporting, waiting for a signal there. Also Peugeot, Citroën in tie-up talks with Fiat Chrysler. That stock surging 7%. Now let's just dive into the Volkswagen news, as it has cut its full-year guidance for vehicle deliveries due to a decline in global demand. The German auto giant warned that markets are contracting faster than expected. This despite reporting an 11.2% rise in 9-month adjusted operating profit, thanks to strong demand for Porsche and Skoda models. The stock this morning bouncing strongly, adding to gains for the last 3 months and for this year, 16% higher for the stock now. Speaking to CNBC, the CFO Frank Witter said the group needed to be efficient amid weaker global auto demand.
When you are forecasting into a difficult market environment, you need to manage your inventories very carefully. That is always important, but even more important in such an environment. So we will continue to focus on it. That's also obviously very relevant for our cash flow performance. You've got to have your act together. Processes need to be efficient, and obviously there's a lot of pressure on the factories to still live up to the commitments we are having in the books in terms of efficiency. So it's a tough environment, but with our products and strong brands, we feel quite well prepared, but we know the reality.
And consolidation talk now on top of those conversations about Volkswagen's own execution strategies as we talk about the rivals like Peugeot and Fiat today. But we'll play more of that interview for you. You can hear about the transition taking place at Volkswagen that's moving the stock today. Let's get to that Fiat Chrysler and PSA reaction that we're seeing. They have confirmed they are in talks over a potential merger. A deal would create an automaker worth around $50 billion. Multiple reports have suggested a merger of equals is an option that is being discussed. And the share price, a stunning reaction, as you can see, 7.2% higher in PSA stock. That means the performance for the year. Look at that. One stock you might have wished that you were invested in, 43% higher now. So it has been a stunning journey for this stock, and I don't think many people would have predicted a 43% gain in Peugeot at the start of this year. Now, what is being discussed, this would see the PSA CEO Carlos Traveras and FCA Chair John Elkann retain the same positions in the combined company. Italian-American car maker FCA pulled out of a merger with Renault earlier this year. You may recall that after the French government withheld its support for a deal. One of the other issues around that tie-up had been potential size too, and whether competition authorities would get involved. But it seems this time round, a changing of the players at the table might be positive, might be enough to encourage the French government to engage on this one. And we're still waiting for Fiat Chrysler reaction. You can see very slow to open up on the Italian market there. Let's get to the likes of Exor, top shareholder in Fiat. The stock, you can see, soaring 6.1%. So that's an early reaction in Italy. Meantime, Deutsche Bank, we have been chasing a lot of bank reactions for you, and this is one of the first to show you, 2.9% south in reaction to the company revealing a steeper than expected third quarter net loss. Restructuring charges weighed down the bank over the quarter. The German lender also saw revenue at its bond trading unit fall 13%. But Aneta, this was always going to be a fairly challenging quarter for the company. Analysts were questioning what their estimates should look like, given how much the company might front-load some of the cost-cutting and the transformation. What's your read in it as you've been pouring through all of these numbers today, listening to the commentary?
Well, to predict how big the net income will be for a bank which is in full-on restructuring mode is perhaps looking a little bit like watching a crystal ball or looking into a crystal ball. So bottom line is that the capital position is actually surprisingly strong for Deutsche Bank, but the investment bank is very weak, and that's why the shares are also probably dragged down. If you compare, for example, bond trading revenues to their peers, then it was surprisingly strong for others and surprisingly weak for Deutsche Bank. So essentially, I think we have to get used to a new normality when it comes to assessing their investment bank. They are aiming at stabilizing their revenues, which more or less has been happening, with revenues now only down by 5%. But the former stronghold, FIG trading, is no longer what it was and probably will never come back to the same volumes which we were used to at Deutsche Bank. And that is, I think, also investors have to sort of, come up or face that reality that it will never be as strong as it was in the past. So having said that, what Deutsche Bank is stressing, that they have posted a profit in every of the four core units now for the new bank, so to say. Of course, they are in full-on restructuring mode, but they keep on cutting costs, which is also a positive, and they keep on executing their strategy. That's more or less their mission. If you look at the outlook, that's, of course, the main thing for Deutsche as well. I guess I was a bit surprised that James von Moltke, which is, of course, the CFO of the bank, was tentatively optimistic about the revenue outlook for next year. Take a listen.
It's a weight of uncertainty that the economy and the markets have been laboring with in recent times. And so we do see that as potentially lifting sentiment going forward.
Is that also positive news for your outlook for 2020? Because currently you're saying you're aiming at stable revenues, I guess, for 2020. Could that be also an uptick momentum for you?
Of course. Our businesses, many of our businesses are directly tied to the health and strength of the economy. For Deutsche Bank, as we execute on our strategy, our focus has been on continuing to grow what we think of as the more stable, less market-sensitive businesses of corporate bank, private bank, and asset management.
So it's, of course, far too early to declare victory for Deutsche Bank because just one quarter was more or less in line with their execution plan, but at least they're executing, as I was saying. I think the new Big D Day is their Investors' Day, which is in December, where they will outline perhaps also more or less a vision for the next years. Perhaps we can also hear a bit more what their outlook is then for 2020 and perhaps a bit more regarding that optimism which they clearly get from their clients. Having said that, of course, the shares are still like very, very low levels for most investors. And then on top of that, we have that uncertainty also concerning the chairman, whether Paul Achleitner will be actually ousted by next year or not, what his role is also in the strategy. We have another big question mark over the asset management business. They have posted net inflows now, but still they are too small to really like compete with the big ones and to make like a big money, because size matters in that business. That UBS tie-up story is gone away. UBS itself also in restructuring mode now. I think we're going to get that story though back at least next year, because they of course will look into consolidation in that sector. But for now, as I was saying, the bank is in restructuring mode. Morale in many parts of the bank is not great as to what I'm hearing, but still they're executing their strategy. With that, back to you.
Annette, thank you. Some big moves on the market while you've been talking, and that's in the auto space. Fiat Chrysler just opening up. Now, it was slow to open, as we saw at the initial start with the chip just on the flat line. But what has happened, the stock didn't open up initially. It then spiked 10%. The gains on the board just over 9% currently. Also, since we've got some more volume in that trade and escalation, and PSA, Peugeot, Citroën shares now bouncing 7.4%. This on the back of Fiat Chrysler confirming that there has been tie-up talks with PSA Group. It's not always a given that you see the share price response you were seeing on the boards, but it does tell you the appetite for investors to see a whittling down of those costs in this huge transition phase towards electric, plug-in technology, but also autonomous vehicles down the track. And Peugeot very much going into some of that new technology area. That's a benefit if there is a tie-up with Fiat, sharing of those costs, but also for Fiat to get back into the game without having to spend a huge chunk of investors' money to try and catch up to rivals. Meantime, PSA also getting access to the United States market through this deal if it progresses. So you can see the logic behind some form of a deal for these two companies. What has been very interesting too has been the reaction in Renault shares. Don't forget, Renault and Fiat Chrysler had initially explored whether they should be involved in some form of a tie-up for the very same reasons being discussed, but that was blocked by the French government, given that there'd been opposition from one of the alliance partners for Renault, that being Nissan. All sorts of issues, given there had been some problems in the corporate sphere for Renault and Nissan, and the French government smoothing over that by deciding not to allow any deal to progress. And Renault shares, you can see, very disappointed today for investors, as it seems as though it may miss out on a transaction, may miss out on an ability to try and team up with a rival in the next journey that they take towards these new electric vehicles and self-driving cars. I want to take you to what we're seeing in Credit Suisse, another big stock we're chasing for you today. The stock is down 1%. It has posted a strong beat on third quarter earnings with net profit of 881 million Swiss francs on the back of a strong performance in its wealth management business. Well, Jemana is live for us in Zurich and has been asking all the tough questions around a spy scandal and the impact on the bank. Jemana, I'm going to toss it over to you with a slightly disappointing reaction in the stock price today.
If I heard you correctly, you said that the stock is down about 1%. I think it's worth bearing in mind, Karen, that if you put this in the context of the moves for the year, the stock is still up around 14%, has massively outperformed its peers, not only UBS here in Switzerland, as well as US banks as well. So the performance year to date has been pretty encouraging, and no doubt, I think investors are focused on a couple of aspects. One is that the return on equity continues to be higher than their cost of equity. And the second is a very good and solid cost management strategy. And that has been consistent with the language that has come out of Credit Suisse from the beginning of this year. Looking at the numbers today, though, so the pre-tax income came in at 1.1 billion Swiss francs. That's a jump of 70% year on year. Remember, the previous quarter, they also posted a jump of about 48%. So the trend this year continues to be of improvement when it comes to those overall pre-tax income numbers, as well as the return on tangible equity. Worth pointing out that for the year now, they're tracking around 9%. That is up from 4.5% in 2018. So things are moving in the right trajectory. I spoke to the CEO, Tidjane Thiam, a short while back, and I asked him what the highlights were from the quarter. Let's take a listen.
It's been a good quarter. If you look at the numbers, you can see that the wealth management strategy is continuing to work. We have 72 billion coming in so far this year in 9 months, the highest ever, 28% up, so wealth management is working. But the big, how can I say this, satisfactory point is really global markets. You know that we've really, for the last 3-4 years, struggled to restructure the business and now bring it to a good place. Revenue is up 34%. I think it's really an industry-leading performance, both in fixed income and in equities. At the end of last year, there was a lot of debate on whether we had restructured enough or should have a new restructuring, and we said, no, we think we have a good platform. Now we need to give them a chance to show what they can do, and the results have been really, really excellent.
So it actually sounds like it was a pretty decent quarter for their global markets business. So worth bearing in mind that this is a business that has been severely restructured over the last couple of years, downsized, if I may say. But their net revenues were up 34% fixed. So fixed income, sales and trading up 72%. So very bumper quarter there. Underwriting fees down 23%, which is in line with the trend of other banks. Worth also talking about their wealth management division, because clearly it is a big part still of their overall revenues, about 40% or so, a little bit more. And also because of the focus of Iqbal Khan leaving, who's the former employee of Credit Suisse, was running that division, left to go to UBS. And of course, that was the origination of this spying scandal, the espionage scandal that has really been saddling Credit Suisse over the last month or so. Today was the first day that Mr. Thiam has spoken out publicly about that particular incident. He said it has been unfortunate and that they are, this is not a policy that Credit Suisse would traditionally pursue. He's sorry for any of the harm that may have been caused. But he also really did emphasize the fact that their wealth management business continues to be doing quite well. They have accumulated more than 70 billion assets in net new money this year, 13 billion in the third quarter. He's saying that the outlook still remains positive despite the fact that one of their high-profile employees, and of course with this incident even higher profile, has left to go to UBS just down the road. With that, I'll throw it back to you.
Shibana, thank you very much for bringing us that detail from Zurich. Well, pushing on another corporate in focus this morning, Standard Chartered shares are up more than 2%. They posted a 16% rise in quarterly pre-tax profit, beating analyst estimates compiled by the lender. Stan Chart said an uptick in business from corporate clients helped it offset the unrest in its core Hong Kong market. Now, CFO Andy Halford told us headwinds are growing due to geopolitical tensions.
At the moment, there is concern on some elements of sort of geopolitical. Who knows in the next few months whether some of those maybe actually do get relieved a little bit. And actually, we're sitting here in a period of time a little bit less concerned on some of those fronts than we are now.
Sticking with financials, Santander has posted a 75% fall in third quarter net profit, but still beat expectations. The Spanish lender was hit by one-off charges of over 1.6 billion euros on its UK division. The bank had a quarter 1 ratio of 11.3% at the end of September. Santander shares trading a touch below the flat line, but no massive reaction. We're going to take a quick break, but coming up on the show, hard landing. Airbus cuts its delivery target for the full year, despite a bumper order from India's Indigo Airlines. More live from Paris next.
Do you have concerns about mild memory loss related to aging? Prevagen is the #1.
It's another Wednesday morning. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Reach the top of Mount Teede or relax on a sandy beach. Fly from London Gatwick to Tenerife with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £349 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
They don't chant your name when you give blood or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
You're in charge of hiring and Indeed has solutions, like online skills tests, which let a candidate show that they are the right hire. And we give you this toy monkey, who will bang its symbols when the right CV appears on your desktop. Okay, there is no monkey. There is no monkey. But there are online skills tests.
See why more than 250,000 companies in the UK use Indeed for hiring. Visit Indeed.com/try today to try skills tests for free today. Terms and conditions apply.
We've been together 3 years. We both love travel, and luckily we've got the same taste in music. Next year, we're planning a big road trip, and my wife's coming too. It'll be nice. The three of us don't do enough together. We know how much your Mini means to you. That's why Mini Service offers an array of convenient options and allows you to book online anytime at mini.co.uk. Because we love your Mini almost as much as you do. Search Mini Service. Who's in? T's and C's apply, subject to availability, participating retailers only.
Airbus has cut its delivery target for the full year amid production delays at a plant in Hamburg. The French plane maker did, however, report a 2% rise in third quarter adjusted earnings. The stock trading down 1.8%. Let's get to Charlotte, who is live in Paris for us. Charlotte, an important story around Airbus, given all the challenges at its rival Boeing. I think many are looking to see whether this company can maximise the very real supply issues at Boeing, but also the reputational issues at its rival.
You see, and it seems that they're struggling to capitalize on those troubles at Boeing with the 737 MAX grounding. You see those delays at the Hamburg plant seem to have an impact on the delivery for Airbus, and they've downgraded their delivery for the end of the year to 860, down from 880 to 890, and that's important because Airbus gets the money when they deliver the plane to their customers. So that will impact the bottom line for the end of the year for Airbus. They've downloaded their full year free cash flow to 3 billion euros, down from 4 billion euros previously. And they've suffered from all these delays at the Hamburg plant that produces the A320 family jet because of supplier delays and staff shortages, and they'll be struggling with that. They've been trying to address it. So they had these short-term to medium-term issues. Of course, they had some bright spots. They had those WTO tariffs that came into place that were announced from the US that they could impose on Airbus planes, and that was put at 10%, which was good news for Airbus. It was expected to be a bit higher, and there was also no tariffs on aircraft parts, which was also good news because that would mean no disruption at their Mobile, Alabama factory that also produces A320 planes there. So Airbus here with a bit of a mixed picture, not great earnings here because of these delays at the Hamburg plant, but they're expecting and they're hoping to address them, but they had to downgrade that delivery outlook for this year.
Thank you very much for that, Charlotte. Meantime, let's go to L'Oreal, which has posted a 7.8% rise in like-for-like sales in the third quarter, driven by a strong growth in Asia. However, CEO Jean-Paul Agon called the environment volatile and contrasted amid challenging conditions in North America. It did seem as though the analysts were very much appreciative of the numbers, raising some of those target prices before the market opened today. Charlotte, what did you make of the story from L'Oreal, particularly around the growth in those emerging markets?
But it was a good set of numbers for L'Oréal. It was beating expectations. And again, it was luxury that gave a big boost for the company. And that's a bit the story that we heard from LVMH and Kering and Hermès that reported for the third quarter already. Luxury is still doing well. There's no slowdown from the Chinese consumer appetite. Asia Pacific was up 22% on the quarter. A very good performance there. They said they did see an impact from the Hong Kong protest, but it was offset by their sales on mainland China. So here, a bit of a relief. No slowdown from China. And that's also a good message from L'Oréal, positive message, because other European consumer staples companies have all mentioned a slowdown in China, but L'Oréal for the moment is not seeing it. So good message there. Their professional division also getting a little bit of momentum. The consumer division a bit sluggish, but they say Western Europe is doing better. As you mentioned, a bit of a dark spot here is Northern America. Still down in sales. It was already down in the second quarter, and that sent shares down in the second quarter. They are addressing the problem. They have changed the head of L'Oréal US in September, putting their former L'Oréal China CEO there. So they're addressing, they said they're working on a strategy, they have a plan. So hopefully this will bear fruit for 2020 for L'Oréal. Also a very good bright spot for L'Oréal was e-commerce. That was up 47% in the third quarter. And again, L'Oréal has been really big and really strong on building their digitization and their e-commerce, which is a key part for this business, and it's doing well. So they've been ahead of the curve on this, and it's bearing fruit. So we'll discuss all these issues with the CEO, Jean-Paul Agon, and we'll bring you this interview at 11:15 CET.
Charlotte, thank you very much. And as you single out luxury as being a performer, I want to take you to another luxury name. And this is a company that makes most of those designer frames, sunglasses that many customers purchase with the lion's share of the big brands. And that is EssilorLuxottica. It has confirmed its full-year targets after posting an 8.4% rise in revenue in the third quarter. You can see the reaction solid, 1% higher for the stock. The world's largest eyewear maker saw momentum in its European and Latin American markets. But the French company, or maybe we should say French-Italian company, admitted that growth in Asia has slowed, citing the impact of tensions in Hong Kong. Still, the performance over the course of the year, 22% firmer. So again, another luxury player that has performed in 2019. Tobias, which has warned that the number of lawsuits it faces in relation to its weed killer Roundup has more than doubled. The number of plaintiffs blaming the glyphosate-based product for their cancer has risen from just over 18,000 in July to above 42,000. The German chemicals company says it is constructively engaged in the mediation process, while analysts estimate the legal cost could mount to $12 billion. Bayer also posted a 7.5% rise in core earnings, roughly in line with expectations, and the stock rising today 2.5%. And some of this is just about expectations and what investors have already priced in around some of those exposures for Bayer. Let's get to Total, which posted a record output in the third quarter, boosting cash flow with the oil major. The French company says it expects production to hit 9% this year, or to be hit by 9% this year. Quarterly profit fell despite the production record, with Total citing an uncertain global demand and lower oil prices, a modest tick high in the share price. And let's just switch over to Iberdrola today and take a look at how that stock is faring at the market open. Modestly in the green, it posted a 9-month net profit of 2.52 billion euros, a more than 20% increase on last year. The Spanish utility also reiterated its full-year guidance for double-digit net profit growth. Juliana.
Karen, thank you very much for running us through all of those names. Coming up on the show, Volkswagen expresses concern about global demand, with CFO Frank Witter telling CNBC the automaker needs to manage its inventories. We'll have more on VW next.
Most people think of Verizon as a reliable phone company.
But to businesses,
I've got to tell you about our beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Next, we donned our skates for Bath on Ice. I'm a natural. Didn't have to hold on to anything. Or anyone. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
It's another Wednesday morning. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to see spectacular coral reefs and white sand beaches. Fly from London Gatwick to Mauritius with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £949 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you. They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
In cinemas November 15.
So you're going to build a car to beat Ferrari? With a Ford. Correct.
Get ready for Le Mans 66.
I hate guys like us because we're different.
Starring Matt Damon and Christian Bale.
What are they doing? Making your car go faster. That's more like it!
Based on the incredible true story.
You got a plan? It's high risk.
Of Ford versus Ferrari.
No, I thought the whole point was to win the damned race.
Le Mans 66.
Hit it.
In cinemas and IMAX November 15.
Chrysler and PSA at full throttle as the car makers confirm merger talks are underway. But Renault investors dismay as the former target reels at the prospect of a new mega competitor. Deutsche Bank shares fall nearly 5% after the German lender posts a steeper than expected loss. But the CFO tells CNBC investors are taking too dim a view.
What you might think of as excess pessimism seems to have come out a little bit, and that's changed perspectives.
Shareholders shrug off a more than 100% jump in third quarter net profit at Credit Suisse as the Swiss bank flags a seasonal slowdown in Q4 and the spying scandals casts a shadow.
It's an unfortunate affair with the people who made those decisions believed genuinely that they were acting in the best interest of the bank. Okay? Now, the action taken was inappropriate and disproportionate.
Shares in L'Oreal soar as the French cosmetics maker beats third quarter sales forecasts on strong demand in Asia and double-digit gains in its premium and skincare divisions. Markets in Europe have now been open for half an hour, and as you can tell, watching for the last 2.5 hours or so, it is all about corporate earnings today in terms of the initial moves we're seeing in markets. The Stock 600 is flat at the moment, but that masks some real divergence we're seeing, certainly from a single stock perspective. We've heard from a raft of different sectors this morning, and investors putting it all together, weighing what this means for the outlook. Of course, we've also got the Fed coming through with their two-day policy meeting concluding today, where investors are expecting another rate cut. The key will be on how the further policy path is framed. So Jerome Powell's comments will be very, very key there. And then, of course, on the Brexit front, we are now looking at a December 12th election and investors digesting what that means for markets. Now let's take a look at the sectors and see what the split looks like. A very evenly split across the board. We've got autos, healthcare, and household goods trading at the top. Autos, the leader, up about 0.8%. At the bottom, we've got banks down about 0.9%. Deutsche Bank will be weighing on that index there. We'll look at it more closely in just a moment. Basic resources, retail, construction, industrials, and technology round out the worst performers of the Stock 600. Technology in focus as we've got Apple earnings to look forward to later on today. Into the single stocks and see what the biggest movers are this morning. I mentioned Deutsche Bank shares there are down more than 5%. They came through with an earnings result showing a steeper than expected loss. That's weighing on shares there. And then looking further at the worst performers of the day, Worldline shares down about 3.4%. And that comes after Atos has decided to sell part of their minority stake in Worldline. Renault shares, one of the worst performers, down more than 3%. Where does the Fiat Chrysler PSA potential deal leave them? Investors so far reacting negatively to that. And then finally, just looking at the best performers of the day, to no surprise, given the commentary from the investment community, Fiat Chrysler and PSA shares trading toward the very top of the Stock 600. Investors see strong strategic rationale for that deal. And then lastly, we just highlight L'Oreal shares trading nearly 6% higher after a strong update last night. Guys?
Terrific. Thanks very much indeed for that. Let's stick with the auto theme. Volkswagen has cut its full-year guidance for vehicle deliveries due to a decline in global demand. It's not holding the share back this morning, though. The German auto giant warning markets are contracting faster than expected. Maybe they're getting a bump because the group
The B&Q 3 for 2 offer is now on, including an unmissable 3 for 2 on all paint, such as Dulux, Valspar and Farrow & Ball. For this show-stopping deal, hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3 for 2 it. Every third item per single transaction in the send-in price order free. Offer ends November 3rd. See DIY.com.
I've got to tell you about our beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Next, we donned our skates for Bath on ice. I'm a natural. Didn't have to hold on to anything. Or anyone. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
1 in 10 Londoners surveyed said they'll give more to charity in the next 12 months. Are you one of them? At CAF, we help generous people like you support their favourite charities by making giving simple. And we provide charities with the tools they need to perform at their best. So together, we can make a bigger difference for our communities. We're a charity and a champion for better giving. We are CAF, and we make giving count. Visit cafonline.org to find out more.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Oh my god, OMG. Is she okay?
Yeah, she always does this. Her Uber Eats just arrived. She ordered McNuggets, so...
Oh. Shall I get the door then?
Probably best, yeah.
McDonald's delivered, exclusive to Uber Eats. Get excited.
There's something for everybody this Halloween at Aldi. Dead good sweets, decorations, face paints. Be afraid. Be very afraid to miss out on these shockingly low prices. In store now. Everybody get to Aldi for an amazing Halloween.
Halloween's back, alright.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot. But in the Which Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. So you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder, so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Tottenham and Edmonton from 10 p.m. on Friday the 1st of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 4th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The Peugeot Professional Van range is the beating heart of businesses across the UK. Whether you're on the road with only your DAB radio for company or navigating tight spots with rear parking sensors, all Peugeot Professional Vans give your business that edge. Visit your local Peugeot dealership during our October van event from the 10th to the 31st of October and drive away with an exclusive finance offer. Master the impossible. Peugeot Motor Company PLC is acting as a credit broker, not a lender. Finance subject to status. Terms and conditions apply. Business users and over 18s only. Guarantee may be required. PSA Finance UK Limited.
Tonight, it's Liverpool v Arsenal and Chelsea v Man United in two truly classic matchups. And with Now TV, you can watch both games live for a one-off payment of just $9.99. Hold on, they're checking with VAR.
That's confirmed. It's $9.99.
What a game changer. So, to only pay for the games that matter to you, go to Now TV Sky Sports Day Pass. Search Now TV Sports. 18 plus, content streamed via internet. Full terms apply.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now, European equities seem to be looking for a bit of direction ahead of today's Fed rate decision. We're seeing the Stock 600 and the FTSE both down just 0.1%. The DAX slightly lower as well, down 0.2%. The CAC 40, however, up 0.1%. Asian markets were in a bit of a holding pattern this morning. The Hang Seng currently down 0.4%, still trading in Hong Kong. In stocks, there's a lot to keep an eye on today. Fiat, Chrysler, Peugeot among our top gainers today, both rallying after confirming their merger talks. On the other end, Deutsche, one of the top losers on the Stock 600, falling more than 5% in Frankfurt after revenue fell again amid a slump in fixed income trading. Santander, Credit Suisse also moving lower, but Standard Chartered outperforming its colleagues, up more than 2% here in London. In fixed income, we're seeing a bit of bull flattening. 10-year Treasury yields currently down a basis point at 1.83%. 10-year gilt yields also moving lower, down a basis point at 70 basis points. 10-year bund yields, however, ticking higher, currently at negative 34. Volatility in major currencies currently at a 3-month low, so not a lot of movement there. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, the yen, both standing pat. The pound and euro are bid after UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson won backing in Parliament for December 12th election. Cable currently at 1.288. But do keep an eye on the lira. It's a bit weaker today after the US House voted to sanction Turkey over Syria. Finally, oil sliding again today amid a rise in US crude stockpiles. WTI down 0.1% at $55 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Len Garens with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. Germany's spy chief says Huawei can't be fully trusted. It's a signal that security hardliners and Chancellor Angela Merkel's government want to keep the Chinese tech giant out of the country's 5G networks. Bruno Kohl, the president of Germany's Federal Intelligence Service, says it's difficult to trust a company that has, quote, a very high level of dependence on the Communist Party. Here in the UK, Essex police investigating the deaths of 39 people in the back of a lorry want to speak to two brothers. They say Ronan Hughes, who's 40 and from County Armagh, and his 34-year-old brother Christopher are wanted on suspicion of manslaughter and human trafficking. Detectives believe they're in Northern Ireland, but they also have links to the Republic of Ireland. And finally, New York City is expected to ban foie gras later. Most council members are backing a bill which will stop the sale of the goose liver pâté on animal rights grounds. They're concerned producing the French delicacy involves force-feeding a bird by sticking a tube down its throat. Global News 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. I mean, this story's caught all our attention this morning. You're a vegan, so I'm wondering, do you think that this practice with geese is actually more inhumane than the general treatment of animals globally for mass meat production?
I actually don't, and that's one of the many reasons why I don't eat meat, is I think that globally we have an issue with how we treat animals around the world, not necessarily in first world countries, but everywhere. And also, this is really interesting because all of us wanted to know more about the story because we were like, where is foie gras banned? Is this common? Is this happening everywhere? And vets have given, their response to this, and they said force feeding is an inhumane practice.
Yeah, I wonder what our colleagues over in the US make of this, because foie gras, the production of it is actually banned here in the UK, but you can still eat it. Coming up next, of course, on the radio, our colleagues in the US getting ready for Bloomberg Daybreak. Nathan Hager, very good morning to you, Nathan. Has this been interesting to you, this story?
Well, if you enjoy foie gras, the production is not something you want to think about for sure. It gives a whole new meaning to how the sausage is made, but that's a whole other issue as well in terms of sausage. But we're going to take a look at how the sausage is made with monetary policy. Of course, today it's decision day for the Federal Reserve. Markets have all but priced in a third rate cut. Question now is, will Chairman Powell signal more easing to come, or is this going to be the end of the mid-cycle adjustment? We are going to put that question to Gluskin Chef Chief Economist David Rosenberg. He will join us to preview the Fed decision in just a few minutes here. We're also continuing to watch bank earnings out of Europe. We'll break down third quarter results from Credit Suisse and Deutsche Bank and get a preview of the third quarter numbers from General Electric. Some analysts say that one could be messy following the sale of some of GE's Baker Hughes stake. Karen Ubelhart of Bloomberg Intelligence will have insight ahead of those numbers. So join me and Karen Moscow for all that and much more coming up as we tuck into cereal on Bloomberg Daybreak. No foie gras this morning.
No foie gras.
Caroline Nera.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Bloomberg Daybreak is up next, but if you're listening on London DAB Digital Radio, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance. Nera.
Let's turn to our guest for the rest of the hour then, and Nick Nelson, Head of Global and European Equity Strategy at UBS, with us in the studio. Nick, welcome to the show. Great to have you here with us. Lots of interesting stuff we want to talk about with you. We'll get to the Fed in a moment, but I just noticed that your contrarian trade is on autos, and I wanted to ask you about this because, of course, we got numbers from VW this morning, also also Peugeot confirming they're in talks, PSA confirming they're in talks with Fiat Chrysler. What is it that you like about autos, given that VW has cut its full-year delivery target and it's cited concern in both Europe and China? What's to like apart from valuation?
It's a good question. So clearly, as you've heard, there's weak numbers out in China, there's weak numbers elsewhere. They're transitioning from internal combustion engines into EV. That's expensive, it's a complicated process, it's very technical. So look, I think there's a fair few headwinds for the sector. Having said that, I would say many of those are pretty well known. The valuations, as you point out, are very, very attractive. So if you look at, for example, what sectors are pricing in a recession in Europe, we looked at 30 sectors and we've only found 4 of the 30 sectors pricing in a recession. Autos was one of them. Cheapest sector in terms of multiples. So there's certainly attractive valuations. I think what may be changing is maybe 2 things. One is if you look at the relative earnings momentum. So the market as a whole has had downgrades. Autos, of course, have had very heavy downgrades over the year. But that second derivative, as it were, the rate of downgrades is starting to slow. And secondly, as we heard this morning, there is maybe some M&A to be seen in the sector, which in theory may normalise some capacity, improve pricing and so on. So I think you're right, the valuations are there. Admittedly, there's a lot of headwinds, but if we're getting past the downgrades, if we're starting to see the end of the downgrades, I think then people can revisit this sector.
Okay, so that's a really interesting contrarian call. So then what is your takeaway from the financials this morning and the big European banks that have reported? Deutsche Bank, their trading revenue has slumped, and Credit Suisse, their share price actually hit mixed results, didn't really impress investors. This really, as we've seen, obviously financials significantly underperform the rest of the market in terms of their share price. But then some saying that government bonds steepening just slightly in terms of the curve might mean better news going forwards?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's another sector. When you look at the downgrades we've had this year, the vast bulk of the down, you've got to remember at the beginning of the year, the analysts were looking for 8% earnings growth in Europe for 2019, which would have, of course, been a pretty decent result. Now they're looking for 1%. So we've had this huge downgrade throughout the year. And banks, of course, and autos, as just mentioned, are at the forefront of these downgrades. Now, if you're operating at a bank in Europe with the ECB with negative rates, minus 50 basis points, negative bond yields in Germany, negative bond yields in many of the core European markets, it's very difficult for them in terms of net interest income to generate profits and profitable margins. What I would say, though, is market expectations on interest rates are so pessimistic. So if you look at the curve, it's suggesting the ECB isn't going to turn positive until something like 2027. So all you need is not necessarily the ECB to raise rates. We think they're obviously quite a way away from that, but you just need the market expectations to maybe normalise a little bit. And as you say rightly, if you can see some of these 10-year bunds getting less negative and maybe some slight steepening in some of the curves outside Europe, then that should help some of the financials.
You like semiconductors as well, Nick. Is this because of where you think we are in the cycle? Is it a valuation story? Is it optimism around the US-China trade talks?
Look, it's very much the cycle story, because these are the super early cycle plays. If you look at the cyclicals, they tend to perform best just as an inflection points when lead indicators are turning. They have had a good run. We've been overweight for a while, but they have had quite a good run this year, admittedly. They're also, when you look at Europe, there's not much tech to go for, right? We haven't got these FANGs, these large global multinational companies that, you know, everyone knows of. We haven't maybe got as much technology IP as the US has, or Asia indeed. So semis, if you think about some of the couple of big semi companies we have, that is an area maybe where investors can put money to work in Europe.
Just briefly on the UK, there's been a rotation, hasn't there, from international into domestic UK stocks. Also, the pound has been doing pretty well this month. What's your take on UK assets?
So I think at a headline level, there's not a huge amount of enthusiasm. The FTSE, FTSE 100, 80% of its revenues come from outside the UK. You've got Kazakhstani mining companies and things like that in there, which really have very little to do with the UK economy. So, of course, that's suffered as sterling has rallied, as it were. But the domestics, you're right, I think they do look interesting. Yes, they've had a good couple of weeks, but they're still down quite a way from where we were on the Brexit vote back in June 2016. So if we get any clarity post this election, that would be somewhere we'd look to.
Nick, briefly, do you expect the Fed to embark on a full-on easing cycle that further supports US equities and keeps that gap between US and European equities wide?
We think there will be more cuts. So we'll have, obviously, we presume, as most people do, a cut today, and then we think they won't necessarily give us too much guidance. They'll see how the data goes, but we suspect the US economy might slow at the beginning of next year because of trade wars, and that might make them cut more.
Nick, thank you so much for joining us on Bloomberg Radio and Television this morning. That's Nick Nelson, Head of Global and European Equity Strategy at UBS. Coming up next, Daybreak with Nathan Hager and Karen Moscow. Nera Cehic, leaving you there.
And we are almost an hour into the equity market open here in Europe. So many earnings to get through. On a headline level, we're flat. This is Bloomberg.
Family property.
Cold Wednesday mornings like this are cruel. You cough, you splutter, so does your car. Its battery dead, killed by an icy claw. Will anyone stand up to winter? Yes, you. Come to Halfords. We fit new batteries on the spot from just £15, and we're open late 7 days a week. See halfords.com for opening hours. Here in Chiswick. Ready for the cold snap? Ready for anything. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Batteries sold separately. Selected vehicles only in most stores.
What if your email was organised by project and not by date? What if everyone looked at the same thing instead of their own inbox? Then it wouldn't be email at all. Forget your fragmented, jumbled inbox and make the change to channels in Slack. Spaces dedicated to individual projects, topics, or teams. All your communication is neatly organised and everyone is on the same page. Slack. Choose a better way to work. Get started at slack.com.
The financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Wednesday, October 30th, 2019. Coming up this hour.
A quiet morning for markets as Wall Street awaits word from the Federal Reserve.
European banks are in focus with earnings from Credit Suisse and Deutsche Bank.
And in the U.S., we await results from more than 40 companies, including General Electric and Apple.
The White House blasts a House resolution to formalize the impeachment inquiry. Plus, California faces winds, wildfires, and power outages. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The World Series will be decided tonight. Game 7 in Houston. Washington stayed alive last night. A win for the Rangers.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York. Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 106.1 Boston. Bloomberg 960 San Francisco. Sirius XM 119. And around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Global stocks are in somewhat of a holding pattern ahead of today's Fed decision. We're coming up to 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 2 points. Dow futures down 21. NASDAQ futures down 3. The DAX in Germany is down 0.25%. The FTSE 100 is down 0.2%. Nikkei 225 in Japan down 0.6%. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong slipped 0.4%. 10-year Treasury up 3/32, yield 1.82%. Yield on the 2-year 1.64%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.2% or 12 cents at $55.42 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.1%, up $1.40 to $14.92.10 an ounce. The euro 1.1117 against the dollar. The yen is at 108.84. Nathan.
So, Karen, it's a quiet morning for financial markets as investors await word from the Federal Reserve. The central bank issues its latest policy decision at 2 p.m. Wall Street time today. Here with a preview is Michael McKee from our Bloomberg 99.1 newsroom in Washington.
The Fed is forecast to deliver a third straight rate cut. The question is whether that's the end of the easing cycle. The Fed's decision will come just hours after the latest GDP data are expected to show another slowdown in the third quarter, and just days before what's forecast to be a weak payrolls report. Watch for a carefully crafted statement from Chairman Jay Powell and his colleagues suggesting while policy is now accommodative, they remain on guard against additional weakness and will act as appropriate to sustain the expansion. In Washington, Michael McKee, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Michael, thank you. Well, today's focus is monetary policy. Bridgewater Associates founder Ray Dalio is looking at fiscal policy as we head into the 2020 election. Dalio spoke with David Rubenstein on the latest episode of Peer-to-Peer Conversations.
After the election, you might get taxes raised on the wealthy, or you'll have corporations. You could reverse those tax policies, and you're probably going to get an increase in spending.
With the election just 1 year away, catch more on the candidates from Ray Dalio on the latest edition of Peer-to-Peer Conversations with David Rubenstein tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Television and tomorrow at 5 on Bloomberg Radio.
And we have a lot of bank earnings out of Europe today, beginning with Credit Suisse. Top-line growth and profit at the Swiss bank beat estimates, while earnings at the wealth management business also improved. The Credit Suisse CEO, Tidjane Thiam, says geopolitical risks remain a headwind.
Political uncertainties, yes. U.S.-China, big one. We will wait for November and Santiago to see if we're going to get a mini deal or not. That's a big one.
As those risks loom, results from Credit Suisse are not impressing investors. Shares are down 3% in Zurich.
It was another lackluster quarter for Deutsche Bank as the lender failed to halt a slump in revenue. The bank's first results after exiting equities saw earnings from debt securities and currencies trading drop 13%. James von Moltke is Chief Financial Officer at Deutsche Bank.
The underlying performance of our core businesses is only down single digits, low single digits in revenue terms, which, given that we're executing a very significant restructuring in the businesses, we think is a sign of stability and success.
Deutsche Bank's asset manager was one bright spot in the results. DWS Group posted a third straight quarter of net inflows, adding nearly $7 billion. Right now, shares of Deutsche Bank are down 6% in Frankfurt.
The shares of Standard Chartered are up 2.5% in London. The lender posted pre-tax profit that topped estimates thanks to strong gains in Europe and the Americas. Altogether, Standard Chartered says revenue climbed 7%, while costs were little changed from a year earlier.
In Spain, results from Santander beat estimates. Revenue at the bank fell, but came in better than analysts were looking for. Growth was strongest in Brazil, but declined in Europe. Shares of Santander are down 1.5% in Madrid.
Now, here in the U.S., more than 40 companies in the S&P 500 report earnings today, including General Electric. We get a preview now from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
The $10 spread in Wall Street price targets on GE is more than the price of the company stock. Bloomberg Intelligence says that overall, the third quarter numbers will likely be messy after GE sold part of its stake in Baker Hughes. Investors will look closely at GE's ability to generate cash. For that, the company is depending heavily on its aviation and healthcare units. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Jeff, thank you. We also get earnings from Apple today. Analysts predict a soft quarter for iPhone sales, with revenue coming in flat from last year. Angelo Zeno is an analyst for CFRA.
We do think you see some better than expected results, or at least commentary out in China. And if we get all that, even if you kind of get an inline type of number, we think that bodes well for the shares.
iPhone sales are projected to fall 12% year over year as consumers held off on upgrades ahead of the new iPhone 11 launch.
On the M&A front, Peugeot is confirming talks with Fiat Chrysler about a possible combination. A deal between the companies could reshape the auto industry. Philippe Houchois is an analyst at Jefferies.
The logic is very strong. What the companies can do together in terms of scaling up, particularly helping Fiat be more compliant on CO2, all those dynamics between FCA and Peugeot are quite convincing.
And shares of Peugeot are up 6% in Paris, while Fiat Chrysler is higher by 8% in Milan.
Meanwhile, Volkswagen is lowering its outlook for vehicle deliveries this year. While VW earnings beat estimates, the world's biggest car maker expects a faster than expected decline in auto markets around the world. Still, Volkswagen shares are up around 1% in Frankfurt.
And on the Brexit front, an emergency election in the UK is set for December 12th. Prime Minister Boris Johnson won backing in Parliament to trigger the snap poll that could finally settle the question of Brexit. It'll be the last chance for voters to choose between politicians campaigning to stay in the EU or leave it immediately.
And again, futures are little changed to lower. S&P futures down 2.5 points. Dow futures down 25. NASDAQ futures down about 6. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thanks very much. It's 5:07 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr is here to get the latest on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Investigators in the House impeachment inquiry expect to hear from 2 more government witnesses behind closed doors. Testimony today is scheduled from 2 Ukraine experts at the State Department. Meanwhile, lawmakers are considering rules for public hearings and a potential impeachment vote against President Trump. Yesterday, an Army officer who serves on the National Security Council testified he twice raised concerns over the push to have Ukraine investigate Joe Biden. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman told members of Congress that he was so concerned by what he heard that he contacted a White House lawyer over the matter. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer criticized President Trump's attempts to disparage Vindman.
Many of our Republican colleagues and some in certain news media just follow him. I saw last night they accused Vindman of espionage. That was despicable. Despicable. A man who's gotten a Purple Heart and served us in Iraq.
The House plans to take its first vote to support the impeachment inquiry tomorrow. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
I'm not going to comment on the merits of what's going forward. We're watching what happens in the House, and we'll see whether they actually open this impeachment inquiry. Apparently they're going to vote on it later this week. It's going to be a very interesting vote.
According to procedures released by the House Rules Committee, President Trump and his lawyer shall be invited to attend all hearings by the House Judiciary Committee. 1 person is dead after a small plane crashed into a New Jersey home, setting off a fire. The plane crashed in Colonia yesterday. Authorities say no one in the home was hurt, but the pilot died. California faces winds, wildfires, and darkness from yet another power outage. Pacific Gas and Electric is blacking out about 1.5 million people in about 30 counties to prevent high winds from toppling power lines and sparking fires. It is the 3rd shutoff in a week. Meanwhile, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti says a fire that has burned more than 650 acres and destroyed a dozen homes was sparked by a tree branch that fell on power lines.
The wind broke off a tree branch. Through that tree branch because of these strong winds far enough to cause a spark off a line that is still intact there, but you can see a little bit of the damage on it. Most likely caused those sparks to fall and begin this fire, and then we were off to the races.
Garcetti told reporters it was an act of God. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thanks. It's coming up to 5:10 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, it's been a strange World Series. The first in the 115-year history of the Fall Classic to have the road team win the first 6 games. The series is close, tied 3-3, Game 7 tonight. The games, except for the opener, have not been that close. Nationals last night scored twice in the 7th and 9th innings, pulled away, beat the Astros 7-2. 2 longtime members of the Nats led them to victory. Steven Strasburg, 2 outs of a complete game, allowed 2 runs in the first inning, nothing after that to cap a postseason where Strasburg went 5-0 with an ERA under 2. He had 2 road wins when a loss would have ended the Nats season. And Anthony Rendon, who led all of baseball in RBIs, drove in 5 with a single, double, and home run. He was asked about the success of the road team.
We don't know, but we're going to continue to try to ride this wave as long as possible. Maybe they enjoy our park, and maybe we enjoy their park. So we're not going to ask questions. We're just going to try to go out there and just have some fun.
Justin Verlander took the loss, now 0-6 in his career in the World Series. Max Scherzer, whose neck hurt him so much the other day he couldn't get dressed, let alone pitch Game 5, has recovered. He warmed up in the bullpen during last night's game. He'll start Game 7 tonight against Houston's Zach Greinke, who has not pitched well in the postseason. The Astros ace Garrett Cole figures to be available in relief. 3rd time in 4 years the series is going 7 games. At the Garden, good win for the Rangers. They scored 3 times third period. They beat Tampa Bay 4-1. Knicks are in Orlando tonight. The Nets home for Indiana. For the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. And in other sports news, the NCAA is taking a step toward letting student athletes benefit from using their names, images, and likenesses. The NCAA's board has voted unanimously to have its divisions consider bylaw and policy changes that would let students market themselves. Still, the process will take time. The board set a deadline of January 2021 for changing the rules. S&P futures lower by 2.5 points ahead of the Fed decision. Dow futures down 25, NASDAQ futures down 5 points. This is Bloomberg.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobilely impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Tottenham and Edmonton from 10 p.m. on Friday the 1st of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 4th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
3 is a magic number. 300 schemes to help bugs and bees, supporting environmental needs. 8,000 grants for local sports, and performing arts get our support. 7 millionaires every week, the nation's on a winning streak. 30 million pounds to good causes every week. Who'd have thought it? These are magic numbers.
Your numbers make amazing happen. 25 years of the National Lottery.
Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The Peugeot Professional Van range is the beating heart of businesses across the UK. Whether you're on the road with only your DAB radio for company or navigating tight spots with rear parking sensors, all Peugeot Professional Vans give your business that edge. Visit your local Peugeot dealership during our October van event from the 10th to the 31st of October and drive away with an exclusive finance offer. Master the impossible. Peugeot Motor Company PLC is acting as a credit broker, not a lender. Finance subject to status. Terms and conditions apply. Business users and over 18s only. Guarantee may be required. PSA Finance UK Limited.
Hey, we know that Nature Valley nut butter cups are delicious anywhere. But why just sit in the kitchen eating them? When you could be here, chilling outside in the fresh air with a tasty treat. Oh, good God! Whole grain oats with a delicious real nut butter filling. Nature Valley nut butter cups. Get out more.
Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Riggs.
C-Trip is the leading online travel agency and the parent of travel sites like Trip.com and Skyscanner. The company provides one-stop travel services such as accommodation and ticket reservations, as well as vacation packages. Despite rapid growth since its start in 1999, the company has seen its shares decline amid tensions like the U.S. trade war and Hong Kong protests. The C-Trip CEO, Jane Sun, spoke to my colleague Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie in Beijing.
Is top-line growth being weighed down by this near-term weakness in the economy?
The Hong Kong-Taiwan situation, yes, it has a negative impact on our top line. But I think these are, one-time kind of thing. So we will see through it and still make a strong investment in the long term.
How would you characterize the broader impact of the trade war on your business?
I'm very hopeful that the leaders from both countries will have the wisdom to focus on our shared interest. And there are so much things we share together and maximize our shared interest. Only then I think both countries will be benefiting from our collaboration.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European and Asian stocks drifting alongside U.S. stock index futures as markets largely enter a holding pattern in the countdown to the Federal Reserve's policy decision. Treasuries are ticking higher. The dollar is slipping. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 2 points. Dow futures down 20. NASDAQ futures down 5. The DAX in Germany's down 0.2%. 10-year Treasury up 4/30 seconds. Yield 1.82%. Yield on the 2-year 1.63%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.1% or 7 cents at $55.47 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.2% or $2.40 at $14.93.10 an ounce. The euro 1.1118 against the dollar. British pound 1.2875, and the yen is at 108.83. Today we are watching for a report on private payrolls from the ADP Research Institute. It's out at 8:15 Wall Street time. At 8:30, it's a look at third quarter GDP, and at 2 we get the Federal Reserve's interest rate decision. And General Electric, Apple, and Facebook are among companies scheduled to report earnings today. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Democrats and Republicans got into a shouting match behind closed doors while interviewing Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman in the impeachment investigation. According to several sources, Democrats accused Republicans of trying to out the anonymous whistleblower who sparked the impeachment inquiry. Southern California is under extreme red flag conditions today as isolated wind gusts in the area reach 80 miles per hour. Crews are battling 2 major wildfires in the Los Angeles area. Meanwhile, PG&E is blacking out about 1.5 million people in about 30 counties to prevent high winds from toppling power lines and sparking fires. In baseball, there will be a Game 7 in the World Series. The Nationals beat the Astros in Houston 7-2. In the NHL, the Rangers won. The Bruins were winners. The Capitals beat the Maple Leafs in OT. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thanks very much. It is 5:19 on Wall Street and live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak on Federal Reserve Decision Day. We're joined now by David Rosenberg, Chief Economist at Gluskin Sheff. Good to talk with you this morning, David. Of course, the markets have pretty much priced in a 0.25 percentage point rate cut today. Do you see this as another insurance cut, or are we in the middle of an easing cycle?
Well, that's a real matter of debate, and I would say that I'm in a minority view that believes that we're just in the early stages of an easing cycle that ultimately will take the funds rate back towards zero, and a whole lot of other aggressive policy measures, because my view is that the recessionary pressures are building in the U.S. economy, and at a time when underlying inflation never peaked at such a low level in any other cycle, the Fed will have no choice but to become more aggressive. And I say that understanding that the Fed is very divisive. It's not clear as to what the tone is going to be in the press statement, and it could well be that this is a classic, hawkish cut. That's not going to sway my view as to where interest rates are going in the next year.
What do you see the potentially swaying the Fed's view?
Well, once again, I think that Powell has to walk a very fine line here, because I could say that in my 35 years in the business, I don't think I remember a time where the Fed was as divided as it is right now. And so he has to cobble together some sort of consensus, even if there's a few dissents. I got a sense at the last go around where the statement might have read balanced, but when you got to the press conference afterwards and you got a chance to hear Powell's own personal views, it was very clear to me that he has a very similar view than I do, and he was very, very dovish. My sense is that the key players at the Fed, and I'm talking about Powell and Clarida and Williams, are probably much more dovish, I think, than most other committee members, but they have to cobble together a consensus. So, I think that, everybody likes to trade around the market. A year ago, everybody was talking about how far will the Fed go in the tightening cycle. Nobody was talking about that there was going to be, at this stage, 3 rate cuts this year, and here today we're going to have the 3rd rate cut. So expect the unexpected, and I think that the unexpected is not that this is some sort of just 1995 or 1998 style of mid-cycle policy adjustment, and that the Fed is going to be 3 and out. I think that things are more complicated than that. I think the underlying tone to the economy is much weaker than it was in those 2 soft landings.
Do you think that if the Fed consolidates around your view and we do head into an easing cycle, that'll be enough to counteract some of the headwinds we're already seeing in the global economy, the slowdown in manufacturing, for example?
Well, I wish that were the case. The first is that, we see a discernible pattern here in Fed policy and how they react, to the end of economic cycles very aggressively. And it is interesting because, in the past 3 decades, these economic cycles have really been less about capital deepening and productivity and inventories and much more about wealth accumulation and debt growth. I mean, these are asset and these are asset price inflation and debt accumulation cycles. And actually, they're quite dangerous, and we continue to promulgate them. But, you go back to the very first of these bubbles in the Greenspan era, and, of course, it started in that period in the late 80s, early 90s with the LBO craze and commercial real estate. The Fed funds rate goes from 9 7/8 down to 3, and then it takes a couple of years to get the recovery going. Then in the next cycle, they go from 6.5% down to 1 after they had to fight the dot-com bubble. And then we go to this cycle, or the last cycle, and they went from 5 1/4 down to 0 with QE. So if you see that the stepwise function here is the Fed each time in these asset and debt cycles is having to get more and more aggressive. Well, we peaked last time, at 5 1/4 went to 0. We already know that the peak in the funds rate was 2.5 to 2 3/4. So where's the bottom going to be? The bottom of the funds rate, each of these cycles is getting lower and lower and lower. We know last time that the bottom was 0 with QE. So what is the bottom this coming period that we're going to be in? Will we see negative rates? Will we see more aggressive QE? Will we see debt monetization? So the key here is really, to look past the tip of your nose, to think creatively, and to understand that it's getting tougher and tougher to fight these debt and asset cycles, and we're going to have to be a lot more aggressive.
All right, David Rosenberg, we'll have to leave it there. David Rosenberg is chief economist at Gluskin Sheff. The Fed decides 2 p.m. Wall Street time. Chairman Powell's news conference at 2:30. We will have full coverage for you here on Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stock futures are little change to lower as investors await the outcome of a Fed interest rate meeting. A rate cut is widely expected, but for the markets, the key will be the tone of Chairman Jay Powell's press conference afterward, with investors trying to gauge the path of policy heading into next year. Today, we're watching for the ADP count of private payroll growth in October and an initial look at how the economy performed in the 3rd quarter. Many companies report their earnings today, including General Electric and Apple. Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg is back on Capitol Hill today to testify before the House Committee on Transportation about the embattled 737 MAX jet. U.S. stocks ended a lackluster session a little bit lower yesterday. The Dow slipped 19, the S&P fell almost 3 points, or about 0.1%, and the Nasdaq was down 49. Crude oil right now a little bit lower at $55.47 a barrel. Dow futures down 22. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it visit HUD.gov/fair housing. That's HUD.gov/fair housing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
It's another Wednesday morning. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and V Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Hello? This is Dustin. I found something. Is anybody there?
We hear you, Dustin. With Sky Q, you can easily catch up on epic Netflix shows like Stranger Things and then watch award-winning Sky originals like Chernobyl. Get Sky and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q for one surprisingly low price, just £25 a month. Visit sky.com and join today. Offer ends November 14th. 18-month minimum terms. Prices may change during contract. Requires Sky Q box connected to broadband. Set up from £20. Further terms apply.
The B&Q 3 for 2 offer is now on, including an unmissable 3 for 2 on all paint, such as Dulux, Valspar and Farrow & Ball. For this show-stopping deal, hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3 for 2 it. Every third item, a single transaction in the send-in price order free. Offer ends November 3rd. See DIY.com.
Hi, I'm back. I just set a personal best on my park run. Feels great.
That's lovely, Mike. I think you've earned the right to put all the bins out.
Hey?
With Vitality Life Insurance, you get properly rewarded when you're active. In fact, you could save over £730 every year in discounts and rewards from our partners. Join over 1 million customers. Just search Vitality Life. Vitality. Positively different. Annual savings available with certain plans and are dependent on members' usage of rewards available. Terms and conditions apply.
Trick or treat!
Oh, sorry, this is a Vauxhall Network Q retailer.
But your sign says no tricks, just treats.
Well, yeah. Treats like a £1,000 deposit contribution on an approved used SUV at 9.9% APR representative.
I'm telling my mum.
Well, get her to hurry. Offer ends on November the 4th. And don't forget our 1-year warranty and roadside assist. No tricks, just treats. Search Network Q. Because buying a used car shouldn't be scary. Personal contract purchase, subject to status, T's and C's apply. 18 plus only, Vauxhall Finance.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and we're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures and European shares are in a holding pattern as we await word from the Federal Reserve. The central bank issues its latest policy decision at 2 p.m. Wall Street time. And we get more from Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Fed officials eased in July and September. That would make 3 meetings in a row. In a Bloomberg opinion column this week, Bill Dudley, former chief of the New York Fed, wrote it wouldn't take much to trigger a recession. And to Dudley, that's reason for the Fed to add more stimulus. But the veteran central banker also wrote consumers are in good shape and they shouldn't be as worried as they are about a recession. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thank you. We also get the latest reading on U.S. growth ahead of that Fed decision. Economists surveyed by Bloomberg predict GDP rose 1.6% in the third quarter.
In Europe, shares of Peugeot and Fiat Chrysler are surging. They're up 5% and 8% respectively after Peugeot confirmed talks about a possible combination.
Bank earnings out of Europe are also in focus. At Credit Suisse, top-line growth and profit beat estimates, though results aren't impressing investors. Shares are down more than 2%.
It was another lackluster quarter for Deutsche Bank as the German lender failed to halt a slump in revenue. Shares of Deutsche Bank are lower by 6%.
And here in the U.S., more than 40 companies in the S&P 500 report earnings today, including Facebook. We get a preview on that from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
At Bloomberg Intelligence, analysts say despite great scrutiny from regulators, Facebook's ad revenue should remain robust due to consumer strength. They expect third quarter results to reflect the mobile ad environment. They're also expecting Facebook to cut spending through the end of 2019. As for Libra, those analysts say ongoing concerns about the proposed currency should not affect expectations because they're not yet counted into Facebook's near-term fundamentals. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Charlie, thank you. And on the Brexit front, an emergency election in the UK has been set for December 12th. Prime Minister Boris Johnson won backing in Parliament to trigger a snap poll that could finally settle the question of Brexit.
And checking the pound, now it is stronger against the dollar at 1.2881 against the dollar. The euro is at 1.1118. And the yen at 108.85. Futures, again, little change to lower. S&P futures down a point, Dow futures down 14. NASDAQ futures down 1. The DAX in Germany's down 0.2%. 10-year Treasury up 3/32, yield 1.82%. Yield on the 2-year 1.63%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.1% or 5 cents at 55.49 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up 0.2% at 14.93.30 an ounce. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
All right, thanks, Karen. It's 5:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. There will be more depositions today before House impeachment investigators. 2 State Department Ukraine experts are expected to be deposed as part of the impeachment inquiry, Catherine Croft and Christopher Anderson. Yesterday, 3 House committees heard behind closed doors from Alexander Vindman, the National Security Council's Director for European Affairs. Meanwhile, House Democrats unveil a resolution that outlines the next phase of their impeachment inquiry. Democrats and Republicans got into a shouting match while interviewing Vindman. Democrats accused Republicans of trying to out the anonymous whistleblower who sparked the impeachment inquiry. Democratic Representative Eric Swalwell says he was one of the participants in the shouting match.
I will say I got pretty fired up when I saw Republicans attempting to get the identity of the whistleblower after repeatedly being told that was not appropriate and hearing that the witness did not want to do that, as he identified in his opening statement. We're going to protect the whistleblower outside the hearing. We're going to protect the whistleblower inside the hearing.
Lawmakers said Vindman testified he did not know who the whistleblower was. Californians are facing wind, wildfires, and darkness from yet another power outage that has left more than 1 million people in the dark. PG&E is blacking out about 1 million people in about 30 counties to prevent high winds from toppling power lines and sparking fires. PG&E meteorologist Scott Strenfeld says the strong winds coupled with very low humidity means much of the state is facing extreme red flag warnings.
We are expecting that this Santa Ana event will be the strongest of the season so far, and those Santa Ana winds typically impact the Tehachapi's for the PG&E service territory. The winds down south are going to be very serious. It's a very serious fire danger situation developing across Southern California.
The House overwhelmingly passed a bipartisan bill threatening to sanction Turkey, warning that a deal struck with the Trump administration won't necessarily save the NATO ally from economic punishment for its military operation in northern Syria. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Thank you, Michael. 5:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Once again, John Stashar.
Nathan, third time the last 4 years, there'll be a World Series Game 7. The Astros will try to win a Game 7 in Houston for the second time in 3 years. Their home record before this series began was 65-22, and yet in this series, 0-3. Home teams are 0-6. Unprecedented in MLB, or for that matter, NBA and NHL history. Washington won Game 6 last night, 7-2. Steven Strasburg, again, superb, 2 outs shy of a complete game, allowed only 5 hits to go to 5-0 this postseason. Anthony Rendon, 3 hits, 5 RBIs. Adam Eaton and Juan Soto with solo home runs. The game had controversy with the score still close. 3-2 7th inning. Looked like the Nats would have runners at second and third, nobody out after an error. But Trey Turner ruled out at first base for running inside the line. There was a long delay, even though the play was not reviewable. And Nats manager Davey Martinez who argued during the inning, argued much more after the inning, had to be restrained by his coaches. Martinez got ejected.
In the heat of the moment, things get blown out of hand. I saw things differently, but I'm not going to, like I said, I'll never criticize any umpires or anything because, they're a big part of the game. I'm just really proud of the boys and the way they came out and played today. I mean, that's all I want to say about that. We got another game tomorrow, and let's come back tomorrow and win again.
You'll have Max Scherzer on the mound tonight. He's recovered from that neck injury that forced him from the Game 5 start. Zach Greinke for Houston, and in 4 starts this postseason, he's 0-2 with a 5 ERA. NFL trade deadline came and went. Jets reportedly talked to the Cowboys about trading safety Jamal Adams to Dallas. Didn't happen, but Adams was upset that it might have. Rangers last night, 4-1 win over Tampa Bay. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
Thanks, John. 5:37 on Wall Street, and the latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is on newsstands now. It is the special Year Ahead issue with a look at how the video streaming battle is shaping up for 2020. Lucas Shaw wrote the story for Bloomberg Business Week.
The new players are Apple TV Plus, launching November 1st, Disney Plus, launching November 12th, and then HBO Max and Comcast's Peacock will both debut sometime next year.
Read more about this and other stories in the Year Ahead edition of Bloomberg Business Week on newsstands now and online at businessweek.com. Terminal customers can subscribe to the magazine at MAG Go and listen to Business Week with Carol Master and Jason Kelly weekdays at 2 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Radio. It's 5:38 on Wall Street, and that's time for the Tri-State Business Report with Bloomberg's Ed Corey. Good morning, Ed.
Hi, Nathan. New York City Council is on the verge of banning sales of foie gras in gourmet stores and restaurants. Proponents of the proposal say it'll help end inhumane force-feeding of ducks and geese to get their fatty livers. Farmers and restaurant owners say it could kill about 400 jobs and wipe out a cottage industry. New Jersey cranberries may be gracing your Thanksgiving dinner table this year. Garden State's the number 3 producer of cranberries in the country. In 2018, NJ Spotlight says New Jersey farmers gathered more than 51 million pounds of them on 3,100 acres for a value of about $16 million. New Haven Restaurant Week returns November 3rd through the 8th at the participating eateries. They'll be offering $17 2-course lunches, $34 3-course dinners, or both. Now you're talking. Advanced reservations are recommended. Prices do not include beverage, tax, or gratuity. At your Tri-State Business Report, I'm Ed Corey. Nathan?
And now we're all hungry. Thank you, Ed. It's 5:39 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Tom Busby, and on WLW in Cincinnati, I'll be reporting on supermarket giant Kroger testing out a package pickup and delivery service in its stores.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and on WBB I'm in Chicago. I'm reporting that Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg is back on Capitol Hill today for another day of testimony on the embattled 737 MAX.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KTRH in Houston. Total's third-quarter profit beat estimates by boosting production and cutting costs.
I'm Steve Potisk, and on KNX in Los Angeles, we're looking at a surprise sales surge at Mattel.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting Honda and Hitachi are talking about merging 4 of their car parts businesses.
Those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. A busy morning for corporate earnings. We're going to get results from more than 40 companies in the S&P 500 today. They include General Electric, Apple, and Facebook. Bloomberg customers can check the earnings calendar on the terminal by typing ACDR Go. And, of course, we get the Federal Reserve rate decision at 2 p.m. Wall Street time. Ahead of that, markets are kind of in a holding pattern with S&P futures lower, but by just 2 points. Dow futures down 18. NASDAQ futures down 2.5 points. And you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak on this Wednesday morning.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, number 1 in compensation, number 1 in professional development support, and number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA/SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills. The kind of skills that companies need to build real products. And the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Why is Lizzie going rental for Fizzy Haze? Is it because her flat is so beautiful and spacious? Snazzy! Or has roof terrace, garden and party room? Surprising! Or because it's 18 minutes to Paddington? Easy! With friendly staff on hand to take any deliveries? Amazing! Or just because her fuzzy friend can live there too? Find your new home at fizzyhaze.com. Fizzy Living, reinventing renting.
It's another Wednesday morning. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Reach the top of Mount Teede or relax on a sandy beach. Fly from London Gatwick to Tenerife with British Airways. With flights and 7 nights hotel from just £349 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and V Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Tonight, it's Liverpool v Arsenal and Chelsea v Man United in 2 truly classic matchups. And with Now TV, you can watch both games live for a one-off payment of just $9.99. Hold on, they're checking with VAR.
That's confirmed, it's $9.99.
What a game changer. So, to only pay for the games that matter to you, grab a Now TV Sky Sports Day Pass. Search Now TV Sports. 18 plus, content streamed via internet, full terms apply.
Day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Democrats and Republicans got into a shouting match behind closed doors while interviewing Alexander Vindman in the impeachment investigation. Republicans want to out the anonymous whistleblower. Reaction from Democratic Representative Eric Swalwell.
The whistleblower pulled the fire alarm. Once the first responders showed up and saw the smoke and the flames and the president holding a can of gasoline and matches in his hands, you don't really need to hear from the person that pulled the fire alarm unless they have anything new to offer. And much of what the whistleblower alleged has been corroborated.
Investigators in the House impeachment inquiry expect to hear from 2 more government witnesses behind closed doors today. Californians are facing winds, wildfires, and darkness from yet another power outage for more than 1 million people. Pacific Gas and electric outages for some 30 counties help to prevent high winds from toppling power lines and sparking fires. The 3rd shut off this week. I'm John Trout.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European and Asian stocks are drifting alongside U.S. stock index futures as markets largely enter a holding pattern in the countdown to the Federal Reserve policy decision. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. And S&P and NASDAQ futures are little changed. Dow futures down 9. The DAX in Germany's down 0.25%. 10-year Treasury up 3/32, yield 1.82%. Yield on the 2-year 1.63%. NYMEX crude oil is little changed at $55.56 a barrel. COMEX gold is up about 0.2% or $2.20 at $14.92.90 an ounce. The euro 1.1115 against the dollar. British pound 1.2880, and the yen is at 108.85. Today we're watching for a report on private payrolls from the ADP Research Institute at 8:15 Wall Street time. At 8:30 we get a look at 3rd quarter GDP. Then at 2, the Federal Reserve's interest rate decision. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, investigators in the House impeachment inquiry expect to hear from 2 more government witnesses behind closed doors today. Meanwhile, it got a bit feisty yesterday between Democrats and Republicans while interviewing Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman in the impeachment investigation. Democrats accused the GOP of trying to out the anonymous whistleblower who sparked the impeachment inquiry. Wildfires continue to rage across California as firefighters battle not only the flames, but high winds and in some cases rough terrain. In baseball, there will be a Game 7 in the World Series. The Nationals beat the Astros in Houston 7-2. In the NHL, the Rangers won. The Bruins were winners. The Capitals beat the Maple Leafs in overtime. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
We're coming up to 5:49 on Wall Street. That's time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. Columnist Marcus Ashworth joins us from our London bureau. And Marcus, like everyone else just about, is waiting on the Fed. So are you, like much of the market, expecting a rate cut, Marcus?
Oh, I think I'll be very surprised if anyone who isn't expecting a rate cut. What we're all getting very excited about, I can't quite understand why so much, is about the possibility of a hawkish cut, which is a bit of a contradiction in terms. But in essence, we bought an insurance policy, well, the Fed has bought an insurance policy against the U.S. economy coming off its highs, which it clearly is, against it falling into a potential recession scenario. The question is how much insurance they want to buy. And the feeling from Le Marché is that this is probably it for the moment, and they may therefore pass December. I don't necessarily see the advantages of the Fed signaling that and being therefore coming across as hawkish. Why not give themselves the option to either go again in December if it is needed as they determine the time, or indeed not and cross that bridge in December rather than signaling something now. I think the market's getting over itself. I can't see the advantage to the Fed to why cut rates if all we're going to say is that's it, we're not doing it anymore. You take the effective way of cutting rates in the first place. So I would expect Powell to be a bit more dovish than perhaps the market is expecting. Therefore, we're obviously going to have Rosengren and George voting against, and possibly Bullard wanted to go again for even more, but I imagine maybe he comes back in the fold now. So we're left in a situation whereby we're all trying to second guess what the Fed may or may not think. We're expecting some numbers on Friday which should show a little bit of perhaps less strength in payrolls, but that's unnecessary. I don't think read too much into that. We've just got a US economy which, if you're looking at the forward indicators like the ISM, could well be this time next year much closer to 0% growth than, say, the 2% growth we got used to. Or if we get a China trade deal of some impact and various other things happen, then maybe we'll be bumping along in the sort of 1 to 2% range, which I think is much more likely. I think the US economy's got more underlying strength. So I don't think the Fed is doing the wrong things here. It's just can't see why they need to be hawkish. So I think they just need to buy themselves a free option either way.
I want to turn to your side of the pond now, the latest on Brexit. We are going to get that early election. Where does that leave things in this ongoing Brexit saga?
Well, it just means that we will probably now Brexit on January 31st, by which time one imagines Boris Johnson will return with a reasonable majority and able to be able to get through his withdrawal agreement bill and the future political declaration without it being amended to death. This Parliament for the last 2 years, since the 2017 election, has gone over itself to try and obstruct and block, and has led us to be, unfortunately, become a bit of a laughing stock. The time they left, we had a chance to get a different Parliament, and then have a real state. If that does indeed get another hung Parliament, as we are in the current state, then that's fair enough, should we say? If, as I expect, we'll get a clear Conservative majority, and I think we'll get rid of an awful lot of barriers. We'll be able to get Brexit sorted with some reasonable amount of happiness between the UK and the EU now, which is a big difference that Boris Johnson's brought. By getting his deal through, it gives a much better chance of getting something more realistic, longer term in the trading relationship, which is what it's all really about. So, that's the prospect. So then I think the UK economy could do really nicely, actually.
Yeah, between Brexit and the Fed, lots for the markets to keep track of. Certainly today, Bloomberg opinion columnist Marcus Ashworth with us from London. Thank you for this, Marcus. And you can read more from Bloomberg Opinion at Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal. Karen.
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 5:53 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Law Report. It's brought to you by American Arbitration Association. Business disputes are inevitable. Resolve faster with the American Arbitration Association, the global leader in alternative dispute resolution for over 90 years. More at ADR.org. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning with Steve Podisk in the Bloomberg 99.1 Washington newsroom.
Uber, Lyft, and other ride-hailing companies have filed a ballot measure in California that would exempt their drivers from a new state law, maintaining their status as independent contractors and still providing enhanced benefits such as a minimum wage and a health care stipend. Maui County in Hawaii is poised to become the first local government in the nation to sue big oil companies over the impacts of climate change. And Carnival, Royal Caribbean, and Norwegian Cruise Lines will pay a collective $12.5 million to settle a class action lawsuit for bombarding consumers nationwide with robocalls touting cruise trips without getting their consent.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need, all on one legal research platform, including guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching this morning. Home exercise company Peloton being bogged down in court over intellectual property. The company relies heavily on its patents, trademarked brand, and use of copyrighted material, and is defending its turf in court with a multi-pronged attack on competitors. For more on the case, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks with Susan Scafidi, a professor at Fordham Law School.
I was surprised to learn that Peloton did not invent the computerized exercise equipment that lets users compete remotely, or the touchscreen, or the on-demand programming. So what is patentable about what Peloton has done?
June, that question goes to the very heart of the case. Is what Peloton has done sufficient to not only be patentable, which the patent office ultimately said yes, but to survive a challenge to the patent on the basis of obviousness? And what Peloton is claiming, and the patent office agreed, is that Peloton had to engage in some technological advances in order to archive information and to allow the back and forth flow of that information between the company and the user, so you could track your progress over time, as well as tracking against other competitors in the studio in terms of live classes, or against everyone who could possibly dial into an on-demand class. So there was some additional technology that had to be developed in order to make Peloton work.
Some say that the strength of Peloton is not so much the patents, but it's the marketing.
Well, marketing and intellectual property protection are not necessarily mutually exclusive, right? Once you have intellectual property without great marketing, it can never go anywhere. So usually these things work in tandem. The claim that this is nothing but marketing around an empty core is perhaps a little extreme in this case. There is certainly something, at least to the trademarks, and very possibly to the patents as well. We just need a little bit more information on what was truly non-obvious and truly innovative about those patents. The thing about obviousness is that it's easy to say in retrospect that, sure, anyone could have thought of putting a screen together with a bike in this particular way and making it work. And certainly, as you noted, other companies did integrate screens and exercise equipment in the past. The question is the way that Peloton has done it, is Peloton's method, to use a technical term, different enough to warrant protection? And that's what we're waiting to see. In the meantime, Peloton is wise to also focus on its trademarks and continue to move forward with its marketing and to try to maintain its position in the marketplace. Although, as you know, since Peloton's IPO in September, its numbers have been falling.
And that's Fordham law professor Susan Scafidi speaking with Bloomberg's June Garasso. Catch more of that interview plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcasts. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. Right now, S&P futures are a little changed, down a point. Dow futures down 13, NASDAQ futures down 1. 10-year Treasury up 3/32, yield 1.82%. The yield on the 2-year, 1.63%, and NYMEX crude oil is down 0.2% at $55.43 a barrel. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
It's another Wednesday morning, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March. Why is Lizzie going rental for Fizzy Haze? Is it because her flat is so beautiful and spacious? Snazzy! Or has roof terrace, garden and party room? Surprising! Or because it's 18 minutes to Paddington? Easy! With friendly staff on hand to take any deliveries? Amazing! Or just because her fuzzy friend can live there too? Find your new home at fizzyhaze.com. Fizzy Living. Reinventing renting.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Wednesday, October 30th, 2019. Coming up this hour.
A quiet morning for markets as Wall Street awaits word from the Federal Reserve.
European banks are in focus with earnings from Credit Suisse and Deutsche Bank.
And in the U.S., we await results from more than 40 companies, including General Electric and Apple.
The White House blasts a House resolution to formalize the impeachment inquiry. Plus, California faces winds, wildfires, and power outages. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The World Series will be decided tonight. Game 7 in Houston. Washington stayed alive last night. A win for the Rangers.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by Inovalon, a leading provider of cloud-based platforms empowering data-driven healthcare for insurance companies, physicians, pharmacy, and pharmaceutical companies. Inovalon, data has a story to tell. Inovalon gives it a voice.
And global stocks are in somewhat of a holding pattern ahead of today's Fed decision. 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are little change this morning. So are NASDAQ and Dow futures. Dow futures down about 14 right now. The DAX in Germany's down 1/3%. The FTSE 100 down 0.2%. And the CAC in Paris up 0.1%. 10-year Treasury up 3/32, yield 1.82%. Yield on the 2-year 1.63%. The euro had 1.1114 against the dollar. The yen at 108.85. And this data check brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Clients earn 1.4% on idle cash in their brokerage account. Restrictions apply. Rates subject to change. Visit ibkr.com/YIB to learn more. Nathan.
Markets are quiet this morning, Karen, as investors await word from the Federal Reserve. The latest policy decision comes out at 2 p.m. Wall Street time, and Michael McKee has a preview from our Bloomberg 99.1 newsroom in Washington.
The Fed is forecast to deliver a third straight rate cut. The question is whether that's the end of the easing cycle. The Fed's decision will come just hours after the latest GDP data are expected to show another slowdown in the third quarter, and just days before what's forecast to be a weak payrolls report. Watch for a carefully crafted statement from Chairman Jay Powell and his colleagues suggesting while policy is now accommodative, they remain on guard against additional weakness and will act as appropriate to sustain the expansion. In Washington, Michael McKee, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Michael, thank you. Well, today's focus is monetary policy. Bridgewater Associates founder Ray Dalio is looking at fiscal policy as we head into the 2020 election. Dalio spoke with David Rubenstein on the latest episode of Peer-to-Peer Conversations.
After the election, you might get taxes raised on the wealthy, or you'll have corporations. You could reverse those tax policies, and you're probably going to get an increase in spending.
And with the election just 1 year away, catch more on the candidates from Ray Dalio on the latest edition of Peer-to-Peer Conversations with David Rubenstein tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Television and tomorrow at 5 on Bloomberg Radio.
We have a lot of bank earnings out of Europe today, beginning with Credit Suisse. Top-line growth and profit at the Swiss bank beat estimates, while earnings at the wealth management business also improved, though Credit Suisse CEO Tidjane Thiam says geopolitical risks remain a headwind.
Political uncertainties, yes. U.S.-China, big one. We will wait for November in Santiago to see if we're going to get a mini deal or not. That's a big one.
And as those risks loom, results from Credit Suisse are not impressing investors. The shares are down more than 2% in Zurich.
It was another lackluster quarter for Deutsche Bank as the lender failed to halt a slump in revenue. The bank's first results after exiting equities saw earnings from debt securities and currencies trading drop 13%. James von Moltke, Chief Financial Officer at Deutsche Bank.
The underlying performance of our core businesses is only down single digits, low single digits in revenue terms, which, given that we're executing a very significant restructuring in the businesses, we think is a sign of stability and success.
And Deutsche Bank's asset manager was one bright spot in the results. DWS Group posted a third straight quarter of net inflows, adding nearly $7 billion. Right now, shares of Deutsche Bank are down 5% in Frankfurt.
Well, shares of Standard Chartered are up 2.5% in London. The lender posted pre-tax profit that topped estimates thanks to strong gains in Europe and the Americas. Altogether, Standard Chartered says revenue climbed 7%, while costs were little changed from a year earlier.
And here in the U.S., more than 40 companies in the S&P 500 are reporting earnings today. They include General Electric, and those earnings are just crossing the Bloomberg third quarter profit, coming in at 15 cents a share. That's earnings per share, and that beat analyst estimates. And taking a look at third quarter revenue, that missed analyst estimates, coming in at $23.36 billion. And GE also boosted its 2019 industrial free cash flow forecast. We'll have more on that as the morning continues.
And we also get earnings later today from Apple. Analysts predict a soft quarter for iPhone sales, with revenue coming in flat from last year. Angelo Zeno is an analyst for CFRA.
We do think you see some better than expected results, or at least commentary out in China. And if we get all that, even if you kind of get an inline type of number, we think that bodes well for the shares.
iPhone sales are projected to fall 12% year over year as consumers held off on upgrades ahead of the new iPhone 11 launch.
On the M&A front, Peugeot is confirming talks with Fiat Chrysler about a possible combination. A deal between the companies could reshape the auto industry. Philippe Houchois is an analyst at Jefferies.
The logic is very strong. What the companies can do together in terms of scaling up, particularly helping Fiat be more compliant on CO2, all those dynamics between FCA and Peugeot are quite convincing.
and shares of Peugeot are up 5% in Paris, while Fiat Chrysler is higher by 8% in Milan.
Meanwhile, Volkswagen's lowering its outlook for vehicle deliveries this year, while VW earnings beat estimates. The world's biggest car maker expects a faster than expected decline in auto markets around the world. Still, VW shares are up around 0.5% in Frankfurt.
And on the Brexit front, an emergency election in the UK has been set for December 12th. Prime Minister Boris Johnson won backing in Parliament to trigger the snap poll that could finally settle the question of Brexit. It'll be the last chance for voters to choose between politicians campaigning to stay in the EU or leave it immediately. Now let's get you up to date on how stocks are faring. We also check shares of General Electric after it reported earnings. Shares are up 3.1% in early trading after it reported a third quarter profit that beat analyst estimates. Meanwhile, futures this morning are little change. The 10-year Treasury up 230 seconds, yield 1.82%, and the yield on the 2-year is at 1.63%. The euro 1.1115 against the dollar. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
Karen, thank you. 6:07 on Wall Street. Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Investigators in the House impeachment inquiry expect to hear from 2 more government witnesses behind closed doors. Testimony today is scheduled from 2 Ukraine experts at the State Department. Meanwhile, lawmakers are considering rules for public hearings and a potential impeachment vote against President Trump. Yesterday, an Army officer who serves on the National Security Council testified he twice raised concerns over the push to have Ukraine investigate Joe Biden. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman told members of Congress that he was so concerned by what he heard that he contacted a White House lawyer over the matter. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer criticized President Trump's attempts to disparage Vindman.
Many of our Republican colleagues and some in certain news media just follow him. I saw last night they accused Vindman of espionage. That was despicable. Despicable. A man who's gotten a Purple Heart and served us in Iraq.
The House plans to take its first vote to support the impeachment inquiry tomorrow. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
I'm not going to comment on the merits of what's going forward. We're watching what happens in the House, and we'll see whether they actually open this impeachment inquiry. Apparently they're going to vote on it later this week. It's going to be a very interesting vote.
According to procedures released by the House Rules Committee, President Trump and his lawyer shall be invited to attend all hearings by the House Judiciary Committee. One person is dead after a small plane crashed into a New Jersey home, setting off a fire. The plane crashed in Colonia yesterday. Authorities say no one in the home was hurt, but the pilot died. California faces winds, wildfires, and darkness from yet another power outage. PG&E is blacking out about 1.5 million people in about 30 counties to prevent high winds from toppling power lines and sparking fires. It is the third shutoff in a week. Meanwhile, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti says a fire that has burned more than 650 acres and destroyed a dozen homes was sparked by a tree branch that fell on power lines.
The wind broke off a tree branch, through that tree branch because of these strong winds far enough to cause a spark off a line that is still intact there, but you can see a little bit of the damage on it. Most likely caused those sparks to fall and begin this fire, and then we were off to the races.
Garcetti told reporters it was an act of God. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thanks for coming up to 6:10 on Wall Street. That's time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update with John Stashauer.
Nathan, it's been a strange World Series, the first in the 115-year history of the Fall Classic to have the road team win the first 6 games. The series is close, tied 3-3, Game 7 tonight. The games, except for the opener, have not been that close. Over the last 5 games, the average margin of victory has been 6 runs. Nationals last night scored twice in the 7th and 9th innings, pulled away, beat the Astros 7-2. 2 longtime members of the Nats led them to victory. Steven Strasburg, 2 outs from a complete game, allowed 2 runs first inning, nothing after that. Caps a postseason where Strasburg went 5-0 with an ERA under 2. 2 road wins when a loss would have ended the Nats season. And Houston native Anthony Rendon, who led all of baseball in RBIs, drove in 5 with a single, double, and home run. He was asked why the road teams are 6-0.
We don't know, but we're going to continue to try to ride this wave as long as possible. Maybe they enjoy our park, and maybe we enjoy their park. So we're not going to ask questions. We're just going to try to go out there and just have some fun.
Justin Verlander took the loss, now 0-6 in his career in the World Series. Max Scherzer, whose neck hurt him so much the other day he couldn't get dressed, let alone pitch Game 5, has recovered, warmed up in the bullpen during last night's game, and he'll start Game 7 tonight against Houston's Zach Greinke, who has not pitched well in the postseason. The Astros' ace, Garrett Cole, figures to be available in relief. Third time in 4 years, the series going 7 games. At the Garden, good win for the Rangers. 3 goals in the third period to beat Tampa Bay 4-1. The Knicks are in Orlando tonight. The Nets are home for Indiana. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. In other sports news, the NCAA is taking a step toward letting student athletes benefit from using their name, image, and likeness. The NCAA's board voted unanimously to have its divisions consider bylaw and policy changes that let students market themselves. The process does take time, though. The board set a deadline of January 2021 for changing the rules. GE shares up nearly 6% on the earnings. We talk about them next with Bloomberg intelligence analyst Karen Ubelhart. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Why is Lizzie going rental for Fizzy Haze? Is it because her flat is so beautiful and spacious? Snazzy! Or has roof terrace, garden and party room? Surprising! Or because it's 18 minutes to Paddington? Easy! With friendly staff on hand to take any deliveries? Amazing! Or just because her fuzzy friend can live there too? Find your new home at fizzyhaze.com. Fizzy Living, reinventing renting. It's another Wednesday morning. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and enjoy stunning white sand and crystal blue sea. Fly from London Gatwick to the Maldives with British Airways from £300 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
There's something for everybody this Halloween at Aldi. Dead good sweets, decorations, face paints. Be afraid. Be very afraid to miss out on these shockingly low prices. In store now. Everybody get to Aldi for an amazing Halloween.
Halloween's back, alright.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot.
But in the Which Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. So you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and V Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Riggs.
Joining me from New York, it's Morgan Stanley analyst Adam Jonas. One of your most recent notes really highlighted the connection between climate change and EVs. How much does climate change start to really drive the shift to EVs?
The average car on the road emits almost 5 metric tons of CO2. Okay, there are 40 tons per second of CO2 emitted by all the cars in the United States. It's 40 tons a second. And yet the world's most valuable auto company, Toyota, makes 0 EVs today. It's kind of a shock. And then on the flip side, you have the world's most shorted auto company, Tesla, that only makes EVs. So something has to give.
And how does technology play into this?
We think the connection between tech and autos is when you see these large the trillion-dollar tech platforms like Amazon, Alphabet, and Apple that are clearly have their sights set on the auto industry as a domain. Not necessarily to make cars, but perhaps Apple wants to turn your car into an Apple store. So as tech firms get close to that autonomous vehicle topic and the shared and connected car, they're being drawn in, and they have the resources and the capital and, frankly, the obligation to do something about it.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow at 6:17 on Wall Street. And Bloomberg Daybreak is out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Let's get a check at the latest headlines with Hannah George at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Karen. The Fed is all but certain to cut rates today for a third time. Investors price the odds at 90%, but economists give it a 75% chance. We get US GDP at 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time, with forecasts predicting growth slowing to a 1.6% annualized pace. That would be the second lowest quarter since President Trump took office. Apple's holiday quarter forecast will be closely watched today. When it comes to earnings, analysts predict another decline in iPhone revenue for the period. And in California, more than 1 million people remain without power. PG&E is pledging a one-time credit for an earlier blackout this month. Meanwhile, Edison International and Sempra Energy may cut service to another 345,000 customers as windstorms move south. For all the news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen.
Hannah, thank you. And we are watching shares of General Electric up 6.4%. It raised its 2019 cash flow forecast for the second consecutive quarter. Futures are a little change to lower. The 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 1.83%, yield on the 2-year 1.64%. NYMEX crude oil little change at $55.56 a barrel, and COMEX gold up 0.1% of $1.60 at $14.9230 an ounce. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, Democrats and Republicans got into a shouting match behind closed doors while interviewing Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman in the impeachment investigation. According to several sources, Democrats accused Republicans of trying to out the anonymous whistleblower who sparked the impeachment inquiry. A bipartisan bill punishing Turkey for its invasion of northern Syria sailed easily through the House on Tuesday. The bill marked both parties' latest show of disapproval for President Trump to abandon the United States' longtime Kurdish allies against Islamic State fighters by pulling American forces away from northern Syria. In baseball, there will be a Game 7 in the World Series. The Nationals beat the Astros in Houston 7-2. In the NHL, the Rangers won. The Bruins were winners. The Capitals beat the Maple Leafs in overtime. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It's 6:20 on Wall Street and live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. We want to dig in a little deeper right now into the earnings results from General Electric. The shares are jumping in the pre-market. Bloomberg Intelligence senior analyst Karen Ubelhart is with us this morning. And it seems as though investors like this second consecutive quarter of a boost to the free cash flow, Karen.
Yeah, I think that's the headline news is people were concerned about the free cash flow. It was better than expected in the third quarter. And more importantly, they raised it a second time to break even to positive $2 billion. And they were looking for the potential of as low as negative $1 billion. And that's important because GE needs to generate cash. They still have a shaky financial situation, although it is improving.
Yeah, so what does this say about the turnaround under CEO Larry Culp?
Well, a couple of businesses are carrying everything, aviation and healthcare. Both of them were quite good, and it looks like they're stabilizing power. This is the third quarter where it was around break even, and they're generating a little more cash than expected. They're also doing a lot to improve the financial situation. Well, so they're moving fast.
Yeah, though looking at some of the headline numbers, particularly on the power revenue side, it was down 32% year over year. I mean, is that going to continue to be a headwind for GE?
The comps are so easy at this point. I think that's going to stabilize. But the important part is they lost about $100 million. That's essentially break even, and they've now had 3 quarters where they've made a couple $100 million or lost a couple $100 million for 3 quarters in a row. So on the profit side, that's stabilizing. And some of the some of the sales decline is they're being very careful about the business they take, And so, I think that's part of it, and so that they don't just take anything to fill the plant.
Is the stabilization helped by the unwind of some of the stake in Baker Hughes?
The Baker Hughes is in the energy segment, and that is just a cash generating activity. They're not making. Obviously, they're selling it at not a great price, but they are getting the cash sooner than people expected, and that's what they're really focused on. So that's now a discontinued operation. That's going to be sort of a sideshow, other than they still have, they can still generate billions of dollars from what's left of that stake.
So does that put more of a focus then on some of the more core portions of the business for GE, and where do you see that?
Yes, aerospace is the biggest piece by a long shot. That grew 10% organically, so that holds together very well, and it needs to, because that's the main source of their cash generation. Healthcare organic was 5%. The margins were very good. That's the second business that's generating them cash. And then the third big business those are the only 3 that matter at this point is power. And it's not worse. It's stabilized. So from an operational point of view, I think they're doing okay. And then from a cash flow point of view, they're doing a little better than expected.
And the company is maintaining its forecast. What does that say for the prospects for GE going forward?
Well, they, on an EPS level, they beat by a little bit. Consensus was 12 cents, and they did 15 cents. I don't really look at that much because there's so much noise in their numbers, but that's a fairly clean number. So they beat a little bit, and they maintained 65 cents. The street was at 57 and had been going down. So I think that gives people a little more confidence that the EPS numbers are holding together. The other thing I would say is they had that big long-term insurance issue. They did do their reserve evaluation, and they did take $1 billion hit, but that's less than people expected. And it's all related to interest rates falling.
And in our last 30 seconds or so here, the earnings call comes up in just a couple hours. What are you going to be listening for?
Going forward, what is he saying on power, number one? Because as you said, revenues are still pretty bad. When does that do more than stabilize? Some commentary on, of course, keep a free cash flow and any other cash-raising opportunities that they have. And finally, is aerospace? It looks like it's holding together fine, but we've got to make sure that holds together.
Karen Ubelhart, always good talking with you. Karen Ubelhart is a senior analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence, covering industrials for us. And as we continue to watch shares of GE in the pre-market, following the earnings ahead of the call, they are surging up 6.4%. As for the broader market, little changed. Ahead of the Federal Reserve rate decision at 2 p.m. Wall Street time, S&P futures are lower by 1 point. Dow futures down 7, NASDAQ futures down by 1 point as well. The 10 years up 230 seconds yield 1.83%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stock futures are little changed. Investors turn their attention toward the Fed, which wraps up a 2-day policy meeting, and a short-term interest rate cut is expected. We also have ADP's tally of private payroll growth for October ahead today. Many companies are reporting their earnings, including General Electric, Facebook, Apple, and Starbucks. Stocks ended slightly lower yesterday amid a lackluster session. The S&P was down almost 3 points, or about 0.1%. A top house lawmaker says a Boeing manager sought to halt production of the 737 MAX over safety concerns before the first of 2 fatal crashes that led to the jet's worldwide grounding. Representative Peter DeFazio, who chairs the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, included the new allegations in a prepared statement for today's hearing, where Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg will testify after being grilled yesterday by a Senate panel. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
It's another Wednesday morning. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
You're in charge of hiring, and Indeed has solutions, like online skills tests, which let a candidate show that they are the right hire. And we give you this toy monkey, who will bang its cymbals when the right CV appears on your desktop. Okay, there is no monkey. There is no monkey. But there are online skills tests.
See why more than 250,000 companies in the UK use Indeed for hiring. Visit Indeed.com/try today to try skills tests for free today. Terms and conditions apply.
Breathe in and out. Every day, you take 20,000 breaths, potentially exposing yourself to harmful particles of pollution. According to the Royal College of Physicians, air pollution contributes to around 1 in 20 deaths in the UK. But at E.ON, we believe it's time to do something about it. We've committed to installing ultra-fast electric vehicle charge points. We offer solar panels and batteries that collect and store energy. And we've helped a citywide transport operator introduce a large fleet of emission-free electric buses. It's time to clear the air. Search E.ON Clean Air.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Trick or treat!
Oh, sorry, this is a Vauxhall Network Q retailer.
But your sign says no tricks, just treats.
Well, yeah. Treats like a £1,000 deposit contribution on an approved used SUV at 9.9% APR representative.
I'm telling my mum.
Well, get her to hurry. Offer ends on November the 4th. And don't forget our 1-year warranty and roadside assist. No tricks, just treats. Search Network Q. Because buying a used car shouldn't be scary. Personal contract purchase, subject to status, T's and C's apply. 18 plus only, Vauxhall Finance.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures and European shares in a holding pattern as we await word from the Federal Reserve. The central bank issues its latest policy decision at 2 p.m. Wall Street time, and we get more from Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Fed officials eased in July and September. That would make 3 meetings in a row. In a Bloomberg opinion column this week, Bill Dudley, former chief of the New York Fed, wrote it wouldn't take much to trigger a recession. And to Dudley, that's reason for the Fed to add more stimulus. But the veteran central banker also wrote consumers are in good shape and they shouldn't be as worried as they are about a recession. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thank you. We also get the latest reading on U.S. growth ahead of that Fed decision. Economists surveyed by Bloomberg predict GDP rose 1.6% in the third quarter.
Shares of General Electric are surging after earnings topped expectations. GE raised its cash flow forecast for the second consecutive quarter and revised its forecast with a midpoint above analyst estimates. Shares are higher by about 6.5% in early trading.
In Europe, shares of Peugeot and Fiat Chrysler are gaining up 6% and 9% respectively after Peugeot confirmed talks about a possible combination.
Bank earnings out of Europe also in focus. At Credit Suisse, top-line growth and profit beat estimates. The results aren't impressing investors. Shares are down more than 2%.
It was another lackluster quarter for Deutsche Bank as the German lender failed to halt the slump in revenue. Shares of Deutsche are lower by 5.25%.
And here in the U.S., more than 40 companies in the S&P 500 are scheduled to report earnings today, including Facebook. And we get a preview now from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
At Bloomberg Intelligence, analysts say despite great scrutiny from regulators, Facebook's ad revenue should remain robust due to consumer strength. They expect third quarter results to reflect the mobile ad environment. They're also expecting Facebook to cut spending through the end of 2019. As for Libra, those analysts say ongoing concerns about the proposed currency should not affect expectations because they're not yet counted into Facebook's near-term fundamentals. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Charlie, thanks. And on the Brexit front, an emergency election in the UK has been set for December 12th. Prime Minister Boris Johnson won backing in Parliament to trigger a snap poll that could finally settle the question of Brexit.
And the pound is higher against the dollar this morning at 1.2882. The euro is at 1.1118 against the dollar. The yen 108.87. Futures are little change this morning. 10-year Treasury up 230 seconds, yield 1.83%. And the yield on the 2-year is at 1.64%. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
Thanks, Karen. It's 6:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has the latest on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Thank you very much, Nathan. There will be more depositions today before House impeachment investigators. 2 State Department Ukraine experts are expected to be deposed as part of the impeachment inquiry, Catherine Croft and Christopher Anderson. Yesterday, 3 House committees heard behind closed doors from Alexander Vindman, the National Security Council's Director for European Affairs. Meanwhile, House Democrats unveil a resolution that outlines the next phase of their impeachment inquiry. Democrats and Republicans got into a shouting match while interviewing Vindman. Democrats accused Republicans of trying to out the anonymous whistleblower who sparked the impeachment inquiry. Democratic Representative Eric Swalwell says he was one of the participants in the shouting match.
I will say I got pretty fired up when I saw Republicans attempting to get the identity of the whistleblower after repeatedly being told that was not appropriate and hearing that the witness did not want to do that, as he identified in his opening statement. We're going to protect the whistleblower outside the hearing. We're going to protect the whistleblower inside the hearing.
Lawmakers said Vindman testified he did not know who the whistleblower was. Californians are facing winds, wildfires, and darkness from yet another power outage. PG&E is blackening out 1.5 million people in about 30 counties to prevent high winds from toppling power lines and sparking fires. PG&E meteorologist Scott Strenfeld says the strong winds, coupled with very low humidity, means much of the state is facing extreme red flag warnings.
We are expecting that this Santa Ana event will be the strongest of the season so far, and those Santa Ana winds typically impact the Tehachapi's for the PG&E service territory.